What is the Polestar, the unique selling point? Because, some brands, Porsche is about, speed and sports cars. Mercedes is about kind of luxury and status. Volvo is about, safety and family, at least for me. What is Polestar about?
Have you been surprised, and this is true of the other EV makers, a lot of EV makers have put up big goals in terms of sales, and then they've scaled those goals back, saying there's just not the customer demand. Do you think that is the responsibility or a function of the products that these other automakers are putting out? Or do you think that there actually isn't the demand for EVs writ large that maybe was anticipated or expected? So you would never buy a 2-year bond or a 5-year bond or
Ever.
a 10-year bond?
I've never owned a bond.
All that and more, so let's get to it. 9:30 on Friday, I thought this was going to be a terrible situation. Had 2 calls that expired close of bell on Friday. Really dependent on Tesla having a positive day for me to save face on these 2 calls. Tesla did end up finishing the day up 2% compared to a couple of days ago. Probably still not good, but better than losing the entire investment. In fact, I actually made a few $100s. Come opening bell on Monday, I think I'll reward myself with at least a share of Tesla. For the week, Tesla's down about 3%. Huge fall off on November 9th, but still down over 19% for the month. Year to date, however, Tesla is still up over 80%. When you go back an entire calendar year, Tesla is up over 15%, and honestly, it's only going to get better as we approach to ringing in the new year. I don't know what this will signal for the markets, but I do know where I feel Tesla's fair valuation should be. So I'm just going to accumulate as many Tesla shares as I possibly can.
Our message here from our Polestar Day, how we call it here in LA, it's I think a very positive, good one. We have 2 major parts here. One, of course, the great news about the product rollout, and the other part about what work we have done over the last summer about the business plan. Obviously, making that a strong, resilient business plan, which means clear view on the break-even, cash flow break-even, 2025. So what I would call in a very short distance, very much in sight, 2025 cash flow break-even, and the funding need that is needed from today till this break-even, a very clear defined amount of 1.3 billion, which we want to cover with a mix of debt and equity. So what I would call a very manageable funding need. These 2 are the key cornerstones of this business plan, which I think everybody would acknowledge is not based on dreamy, fancy production numbers, but really a very realistic and achievable volume.
Thomas, let me jump in and ask you about those production numbers, because you've scaled back your 2023 production forecast a couple of times already. Now you expect to make 60,000 vehicles in total this year, but you need to get up to, I think, 155,000 by 2025. How are you going to make that leap from 60 to 155 in the next couple of years?
Well, yesterday people were queuing to get a ride along in our Polestar 3 SUV and in the SUV Coupe, the Polestar 4. Both cars are ready to go out. The Polestar 4 actually has production start next week. The Polestar 3 will start production early 2024. So 2024, we will get these 2 cars in our hands. 25 will be a year where they will be fully in customer delivery, plus the Polestar 5 joining. So 3 great cars in the exclusive segment. So these 2, this product lineup, of course, is a big reason for our increase of volume in this period.
You just called your products exclusive. What we've seen today is Richemont, the owner of Cartier, warning that they are seeing a significant consumer slowdown at the upper end. You've got Diageo warning that its premium products are starting to hit price resistance. We're seeing it all across the luxury sector at the moment, that the consumer is saying, I can't afford that anymore, even the upper end consumer. Are you seeing any evidence of that? Are exclusive EV products going to face the same headwinds that the rest of the luxury sector might be seeing at the moment?
I'll go ahead and answer that. Any luxury brands that aren't named Tesla are probably going to see much more resistance from the consumer. I mean, you saw what that software looked like. Any vehicle can get you from point A to point B, but the true mark of distinction will be what resides within that vehicle. These are going to be computers on wheels. Functionality of the software is going to be equally as important as the efficiency of the powertrains in the eyes of the consumer. To assume Polestar prices and not get Tesla quality?
President Biden has within the last couple of days signaled his support for the UAW to start targeting businesses like Tesla. He thinks that maybe that's the next place that they should be looking. What do you think about your labor? Do you think you could be facing strikes? Do you think you could be facing a union push? Do you think this is going to be something that pulls in the whole of the automotive sector in the United States?
Well, not really that much the question to us, because we have a very simple way of having basically no manufacturing footprint on our own. We have contract manufacturing with our big partners in that, obviously, the Volvo factory in Ridgeville. We have production together with Geely. And this is where, of course, this question you have now should be targeted. We are very well familiar with factories, with unions. We have, obviously, in Sweden, a very strong base as well with manufacturing in Volvo. So I think that's really no question mark from our side onto that.
What is the Polestar, the unique selling point? Because, some brands, Porsche is about, speed and sports cars. Mercedes is about kind of luxury and status. Volvo is about, safety and family, at least for me. What is Polestar about?
Polestar main differentiator clearly is our design focus. It's a brand with strongest design as advanced as its technology. That's our slogan. And I think yesterday at our Polestar Day, when you see the lineup of the beautiful cars and how innovation is brought to the customer through our design, made it really desirable. I mean, that is how we think electrification will succeed. Cars that really make people are passionate about. And what is the greatest driver for passion is clearly the design aspect of it. So if you ask us to narrow it down to that one aspect, it's design.
Thomas Ingenlath, CEO of Polestar, making production in the United States. There should be alarm bells going off in the C-suite of GM and Ford. Scale back your production of battery electric EVs if you want to. There are more companies waiting in the wings, eager to take your market share.
Let's talk about Tesla, as we always do, but then I want to sort of broaden it out and talk about the markets and some of the other companies that you're invested in. There was an analyst call just yesterday, this is HSBC, which really initiated coverage. They said that their price target was $146. I assume you probably looked at this and probably laughed, given your very bullish views on Tesla. But
I know I did.
But what was so interesting about the report was that they really were trying to define the company as an EV automobile maker. Is that the way you think about this company?
I think about it as a technology company that's providing services to their own company and to others. They can't possibly be matched by anyone else. They have data, technology. They make cars cheaper than anyone else. When Ford makes one of these cars, an electric car, every car they make, they lose $36,000 on. $36,000 per car.
Damn!
Our company now makes about $8,000 or $9,000 in profit a car. They were making $15,000 in profit a car. But if they build a plant that costs $7 billion for 1 million cars, that plant was making $15 million a year, $15 billion a year on a $7 billion investment. $15 billion on a $7 billion investment. An ordinary industrial company would make 15% on capital, 20% the most. This guy's making his capital twice a year. Now he's making it once a year. He's making $8 billion in a $7 billion plant. So he's the lowest cost person. Everything about the business is trying to drive prices lower. Right now, they will be in a very, in the 1900s, early 1900s, the automobile companies were tremendous innovators. No longer is the case. In the 1950s, they decided they were going to go for profitability, and they outsourced all of their supply chain to their detriment. And all these companies went bankrupt. Hundreds of them went bankrupt. And now the way we're going is that their electric cars, they drive I guess they have about 30 miles a day, 30 or 40 miles a day, and they have 3 million of them that are collecting data. 100 million miles a day they're getting for data, and then they're also getting compute that they're going to have more compute than anyone in the world in 18 months.
So
to train it.
I mean, that's just simple. Matter of fact, this is what's happening. I mean, it's like a gimme field goal at the 3-yard line. No, stretch that. It's like a Philadelphia tush push at the goal line. That's a touchdown, folks. Even if you were just looking at Tesla in a vacuum, you could see that this company is doing exceptionally well in a market that hasn't been kind to newcomers. But the winds of change are in the air. Those with the foresight will be able to plan accordingly and reap the spoils.
Have you been surprised, and this is true of the other EV makers, a lot of EV makers have put up big goals in terms of sales, and then they've scaled those goals back, saying there's just not the customer demand. Do you think that is the responsibility or a function of the products that these other automakers are putting out? Or do you think that there actually isn't the demand for EVs writ large that maybe was anticipated or expected?
There's 1.5 billion cars that have to get replaced. They do about 80 million cars a year, and a small percentage of those, 10%, are electric right now. Ultimately, it's going to be all electric. But the reason there's not more demand is the cars that are out there are not very attractive by the dealers, by the car companies, and they're expensive, number two. And then in addition to that, the dealers who sell them, they don't want to sell them because there's nothing to service. The dealers make all their money on servicing. So dealers sell them, they're not selling them.
Ding, 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 ding. Tell him what he's won, Johnny. Your mother right. If you have an option to sell an internal combustion engine or an electric vehicle, you get an internal memo from on high that says push the ICE or hybrid vehicle. That's what you're gonna do. Dealerships want these individuals to come back. Two things are going to happen when you sell them an electric vehicle on your lot. One, those people aren't ever coming back for service, at least not as much as they would if you sold them the internal combustion engine, oil change, all that. And two, you've given them the gateway drug to go get a Tesla. And unless you've got a used Tesla on your lot, they're not buying their next vehicle from you.
Talked about trying to bring prices down, and that's something that Elon Musk has talked a lot about. At the same time that he's going to try to bring prices down, you have the potential for Tesla to become a target of the UAW, which of course just made this new deal with the other big automakers at meaningfully higher prices in terms of what those employees are going to be getting. What do you think about that?
I think Tesla's employees are the highest paid workers in the world.
Get 'em! Why is that, Ron?
As far as the automobile companies go, because they own stock.
As a function of the stock.
And that stock option would not be present in all instances if it were a unionized company. When the unions were in control of Fremont, as soon as they had trouble, they ran from it. Tesla took over that plant in Fremont after the unions had left, after the company had gone bankrupt. Tesla employees, there's a good story that one of the executives of, and then I want to talk about other.
Yeah, no, of course.
One of the executives who devised the pay plan for the employees was telling me that he's a small Jewish guy like me, and he was walking through a plant, and a large black man walks over to him, shaved head, tattoos all over the place, and says, Ira, are you the man who devised the pay plan for us? And he said, yes. He said, I want you to know that I'm the first man in my family, the first person in my family to ever be able to afford a home. And thank you very much. And so the workers there make more than anyone else by far, and their health care, all the benefits are better. The unions have been trying to organize Tesla, Toyota, all the foreign companies for years. They failed repeatedly. Why? Because those companies are not, the union's not in business to keep the employees. They're in unions to have the power.
Not about the employees, it's about the union having the power. I'm sure there's stories like that all over the Tesla factories. Again, I'd be willing to work at Tesla just for the stock. I mean, maybe a little money, but I'd say 90% of my paycheck could be stock. Feel free to put my limited skills to use, Tesla.
You know, when you think about China, how do you think about the growth there? Because that's a key piece to the Tesla story. Li Auto reported its earnings yesterday and had strong EV guidance. It's gaining market share. I'm just wondering how you think about the competition, but also the weakening Chinese consumer. And have you discounted that portion of the Tesla story at all, given the Chinese economic forecasts out there?
Tesla right now is doing about 1.8 million cars a year. When we started investing in the company 7 years ago, when we invested between 2014 and 2016, they were doing 41,000 cars a year. So 41,000 cars a year to 1.8 million, they're on their way to 20 million cars. China is about 1 million right now of their 2.8 million. But a large percentage of what they make in China is exported from China to Europe. And the more they build in Europe, of course, the more they're going to save on transportation costs and duties. The idea is that China invited Musk in, and invited him in because the Chinese car companies have done very poorly for a long time. And the promise was that he's going to help them become better car manufacturers, and he's not trying to take over the market in China, better car manufacturers and develop a local supply chain. And so he was the only one that's ever been invited into China that's been able to not have a partner, a local partner, to operate their business.
Do you really understand what he's saying right there? Please. Help us become better EV manufacturers. It's like going to the dog track and putting Tesla as the lead rabbit. All those other dogs are gonna chase that rabbit, improving their performance greatly. This should be happening here in the United States, but it ain't. So with this changing of the guard, going from the internal combustion engine and the hybrid to the battery electric vehicle, it's not going to be like changing your bed sheets. The longer the legacy auto manufacturers here in the United States take, these Chinese automakers are going to find a way to squeeze into the US markets. Once that happens, it's going to be Toyota in the 80s all over again.
So I'm convinced that they have good operations in China. The person who runs their Chinese business, the Tesla business in Austin, in fact, is probably in line to be important person at Tesla overall. He's Chinese, and he was brought from China to Texas and runs the business there. He's going to be in charge of all the automobile business. So I think the relations they have with China are exceptionally good. Both people are getting something from it, and I think that business will continue to grow. But he's going to open plants all around the world for low-cost cars, and wait till you see what's going to happen when all of a sudden they start selling cars instead of for $40,000 a piece, for $25,000 a piece, which is going to happen in about a year and a half from their new model. The new model, they think, is going to do 5 million cars a year. 5 million cars a year for the Model 2. That's coming.
The next gen vehicle is going to be spectacular when you're talking about the sheer volume that these factories are going to be producing. Nueve Leon, Giga Shanghai, and Giga Berlin will be the prime areas where these cars will be pumped out. In addition to opening up the total addressable market, Nueve Leon is going to introduce new car markets for Tesla.
I just want to know, in this particular moment, given where you may think the market is, given where bond prices are, I think a lot of people are really trying to rethink what's the mix of what a portfolio is even supposed to look like in this world, given what's happening in Israel, in Ukraine and the like. Are you buying stuff? What are you doing?
Every day. I am amazingly bullish. And so basically in 1960s, there was Vietnam War, there was inflation, there were assassinations of the presidents of the United States, there was assassination of Robert Kennedy, assassination of Martin Luther King. I was a patent office examiner in Arlington, Virginia, and I went to law school at night and worked in patent offices daytime. And one day, right after King is assassinated, one of my friends, I'm on one side of the office, runs over and said, "Ronnie, come over here." And I ran to the other side of the building. All of Washington was on fire. It was amazing. So we got on our motorcycles and drove in. You're not allowed to. We broke into the city, driving around, and came back. But that was the city falling apart. It looked like the country was ending. There would have been marches on Washington. And with the market, the Dow Jones was 1,000. The GDP was 800. 800 billion. It's now 27 trillion. The Dow Jones was 1,000 then. It's 34,000 now. This is 5 doubles. 5 doubles in the last 50 years, 53 years. That means you doubled every 5 years, every 10 years rather. So that means that's when we're in 7, right? So basically, the way I think about it is that inflation, whenever you have a war, you have a pandemic, you have to have inflation, government has to pay for it. And when the government pays for it, then when you come out of it, they have to pay it back. The way they pay it back is not by paying down any debt. They pay it back by making your money worth less. So there's inflation. So the way we think about things is that inflation is going to reduce the value of your money in half about every 14 or 15 years. About 4 or 5% a year is inflation. That's my whole lifetime. 4 or 5%. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 7, but 4 or 5% is the number.
So you would never buy a 2-year bond or a 5-year bond or
Ever.
a 10-year bond?
I've never owned a bond.
Damn! This is some billion-dollar advice for free 99 from Ron Barron.
So I'm invested in, and I don't have a lot of cash either. I'm always invested, and whenever I have a chance to buy more, I buy more. So in Tesla, I gave you the sheet before.
Yep.
That showed that when I started in business, so 1970 I come to New York and I'm in debt. 1982 start Barron Capital. We had 10 million under management. 10 million. That's an M. Then 1992 had 100 million. Now it's 41 billion, and we have 40 billion of profits. So basically, most of the money that we manage is profits. Of course, we had 55 billion a couple of years ago, but that's all from depreciation. Now, I think what's going to happen in the next 2 years, by December of 25, I think we'll be back to where we were in.
And what gives you that confidence?
The businesses are growing, and the multiples are now lower. So basically, multiples are now lower. The businesses are growing. You know, the growth in our country is about 7% a year historically. It's about 4 or 5% of inflation, and about 2% is real. All the growth that we've had in the United States, in our country, has been in the last 200 years, and it's the last 20, 30, 40 years, it's accelerating. Growth is accelerating, it's not slowing down. And so basically, it used to be a capital-intensive economy. Capital represented, I think it was 65% of book values. Now it's 44% or 42%. It's becoming less capital intense. Multiples should be higher because of that.
The economy isn't slowing, it's growing, ladies and gentlemen. I don't operate in a lot of cash either. If I find myself with some surplus cash, I'm putting that right into the brokerage account. More importantly, right into Tesla in some way, shape, or form. Some very valuable nuggets of wisdom from billionaire Ron Barron. In conclusion, Polestar is producing vehicles here in the United States. If you're GM, Ford, alarm bells should be ringing. And we have investor Ron Barron combating the FUD that we've heard about Tesla in recent days, shedding some light in that dark bear cave. I don't know about you, but I'm pouring as much of my free cash into the company of Tesla as I possibly can. The night is darkest right before the dawn. That's all I have for you today. Be easy. Peace.